I know people are trickling in, but let's get started since we have a lot to cover today. So welcome everyone to this very first virtual gathering that the Siinqee Institute has organized. We are very honored to have you join us for this webinar today. My name is Nardos and I'm part of the Siinqee Institute board, and I'm going to kick off this program by saying a few words. First and foremost, Happy Women's Month. As you all know, the world celebrated International Women's Day yesterday, and this whole month is dedicated to celebrating women. And I want to wish every woman a happy Women's Month. Please check our social media posts and website that we're going to be posting throughout the month of March for tributes to various women. And some of these are sent to us by our audiences. First, I want to acknowledge that while we are privileged to celebrate Women's Day and month and gather here in peace and talk about Siinqee, so many of our sisters in Oromia who live in the very place that gave us Siinqee, that gave the world Siinqee, are not so fortunate and are going through unimaginable suffering beyond what words can describe. And so I want to make sure that we acknowledge that and approach our event with humility and deep realization that so many of our sisters are suffering as we speak. And so we must do what we can to stand in solidarity with them. Also, I want to thank our Oromo foremothers who gave us Siinqee and those people who paid the ultimate sacrifice to ensure that Siinqee continues until today so that it got to us. This is despite all the challenges, discriminations, persecutions that Oromos have faced for generations. So I really want to express my deepest gratitude and express how indebted we are to these Oromo women. So for most of you, this may be the very first time you heard of the Siinqee Institute. So let me briefly tell you who we are. You can also check our website, which we can put in the chat if you want more information. We at the Siinqee Institute are a network of individuals and small groups who came together from across different social, cultural, political, racial, spiritual, and national boundaries to form the Siinqee Institute. And what brought us together is our shared dream, which is to reclaim the core Siinqee values of relationality, solidarity, equity, and justice, to empower all women and facilitate engaged, vibrant communities. This is what drives us at the Siinqee Institute, and you will hear more about these core Siinqee principles throughout the program. Some of you may be well aware that the name Siinqee or Siinqee comes from Oromo women's ancient indigenous knowledge system, where Siinqee or Siinqee is a symbolic stick representing women's empowerment and sisterhood. So our agenda today is, and it will be displayed on the screen. I'm going to read the land acknowledgement. We at the Siinqee Institute offer deep gratitude and respect to the indigenous stewards of the lands on which we live, learn, and work. Deeply engaged in our own decolonization, we also offer meaningful support to emancipatory struggles for decolonization, justice, and self-determination everywhere.
Hello everyone, happy Women's History Month. I bow my head to honor my Siinqee foremothers, and I would like to start with their blessings, with the Siinqee stick here and the grass. Biyyi nagaa haa ta'u, namni nagaa haa ta'u, malkaan nagaa haa ta'u, sululli nagaa haa ta'u, gaarri nagaa haa ta'u, lagni nagaa haa ta'u. Warra waami walii owwaatu haa taanu, warra iyyee walii birmatu haa taanu, warra haasa'ee wal hubatu haa taanu. Walga'iin keenya kan milkii nuuf haa ta'u. Siinqee is practiced back home. Like it really is an incredible culture that our ancestors, our foremothers developed. A very creative strategy of empowering women and empowering their communities, their families and their communities, lifting up their communities. It's an incredible strategy and an incredibly creative process. So I think just leaving it to chance is not a way to go, because this is something precious. Something precious is being lost when we lose Siinqee. And we are reclaiming it in this part of the world because it is so precious. There's a lot of incredible values to the Siinqee practice. So we're trying to look at that. And today is the day when we look at all of the different meanings and how Siinqee was practiced back home, how Siinqee is practiced here out in the diaspora, and how Siinqee practice relates to other women's practices of other indigenous cultures elsewhere. So we're going to look at all of that. And before that, I think Aga will give us a wonderful flavor of what Siinqee relationality would look like back home and here, and how it can be transferred through generations. But before all of that, I think I would pull out 3 core principles and values of what Siinqee is, what Siinqee means to us and to us. So the very first one is relationality. Every society starts from some assumptions, some beliefs, some values. And for hierarchical societies, it's hierarchical values, hierarchical assumptions of how society is organized. For the Oromo, it's a very egalitarian assumption. Gada and Siinqee work together. The Gada system of the Oromo people is a very egalitarian, or call it semi-egalitarian system of self-governance. And that assumption comes from a very deep place in the indigenous cosmology of Oromos. And so relationality is the first core value, the core principle of Siinqee. In Siinqee, relationality means the beginning, the fundamental truth from which we start. When we practice something, we go back to those assumptions. We start from those assumptions of egalitarianism, interconnectedness, interdependence of life, and everything in the cosmos are interdependent. And I think it is the closest meaning of Safu. In the Oromo culture, we call it Safu. And Safu is a demonstration of this deep interconnectedness and interrelatedness of all beings in the cosmos. And this interconnectedness is not hierarchical. It is an egalitarian, and it's maintained by checks and balances of equity and harmony and balance. So that is the fundamental truth we start from. Everybody is equal. Everybody is interconnected. Everybody is interrelated, inseparably interrelated. And once that relationality, or whatever we call Safu, is broken, then it's everybody's responsibility to restore it. And women take a particular responsibility because they are closer to that relational piece, because women connect communities, women connect families, women connect nations. So they take the responsibility. And when anything happens and that relationality and Safu is broken, women raise their Siinqee and ululate. Something is wrong, something is broken. Something that is not supposed to be broken is broken. We have to restore it. It's our shared responsibility. So that ululation, that, or sometimes they scream, ooh, that is a siren sending a message that something precious is broken and it has to be restored before any life activity continues. So And that shared responsibility also calls for solidarity. So solidarity is the other core value of Siinqee. Solidarity is against injustice. Injustice, not just to call out the injustice that others do to us, but also to call in and look at the injustices in which we ourselves participate in our complicity with injustice. So that actually is a very unique definition of solidarity within the Siinqee culture. So the last core principle, core value, is justice, equity, and justice. And justice is healing. Okay, there is the fundamental truth. It is broken. People have come together in solidarity to restore it. And what happens? The result would be justice. Justice would be done. Safu will be restored. When Safu is restored, justice is done. When hurt has happened, the hurt has healed, or it started the process of healing. And you will see all of this. And justice is done only when it is a restorative piece. So when the hurt is done, when social bonds that have been broken or violated have been maintained and replaced and restored. So these are the core principles that you will see throughout today, in the videos and in the discussions. You will see relationality, you will see solidarity, you will see sisterhood, you will see justice and fairness and equity. So I will hand over to my facilitators. Thank you so much.
Today I'm sharing a storytelling, which is you're going to see some of the principles that Kuwee talked about, how that passed down to generation, how those values are taught in the form of games, in the form of storytelling. And I'm sorry, I forgot to say Happy International Women's Day to everyone out there. It's a beautiful day, and I wish everyone a joyful International Women's Day. So the role of what I'm going to talk is the role of storytelling within the Oromo community. Storytelling was used by our elders as a way to pass down practical knowledge, history, our heritage, and language to the generation that's following. It's through storytelling that our elders taught kids the importance of moral values. They instilled and built character through storytelling and through games. Storytelling fostered intergenerational connections and provided a sense of identity, community, and belonging. This is, for me, really, I very much connected to this. I grew up in a village, and I vividly remember sitting by a fireside with my siblings, my parents, and adults most nights, listening to adults talking about their past, about their dreams, about their cows, about their farm. And in those conversations, beautiful proverbs that they share, and the children playing games and sharing from one another stories. Sometimes we stay throughout the night. It was such a fun but also educational moment for us. Education in a very fun way, in a collaborative way, in a family environment. It was such a beautiful memory that I have. And I truly believe those are one of my most memorable time of my year that help develop the person I am today. I try to share a little piece of my childhood to my kids when they were young. That way they can feel connected and at least have some things of, my past from my parents, grandparents, and also they can remotely, at least in a small way, related to them. And they used to enjoy it and keep asking me, can you tell us that story? Can you play that games? For kids, it's really fun. So you can easily educate children on these valuable stories, cultural and wisdoms and history to kids through stories. So I just picked two of the stories from my childhood. I'm not going to give you a narration of the story. We are limited by time. I just want to focus on the value of the story, on the moral values of the story. The first one you see, it's a story, Abogudov Warabes. This is a very famous story and it's very long. But I just give you what the moral of the story in this one. This is the moral of the story is that, as you know, the lion is the strong, it's predominant animal in the wild, so he's always like to dominate. So the story is that being powerful you should not reprise, you should not take advantage of the less fortunate or the weak one. That's the moral of the story too, that's being instilled or passed to the children. And the second image, you see two birds and a frog. It's a story about a frog and a bird. So the moral of the story, again, I'm sorry, we can't go into the details of the story, but the moral of the story is that being prideful, being arrogant is harmful to self and to others. So it teaches kids to be modest and humble in their interaction with each other, with their friends, with their siblings, and people around them. And similarly, we also had a lot of games, and I just, the few that I chose. The first one is Toke Mali. Toke Mali is a number game. This is actually a multi-layered game because in this game, children learn counting their numbers, counting from 1 forward up to 1,000 and then backwards. It's not only counting numbers, but also what those numbers represents in the nature, in our environment. So toke mali, toko kuba, lama mali, lama muchareti, toko kuba. So when we learn the numbers, we also say what they signify from within the culture, from within the environment. So kids learn about the numbers, and also they learn about the culture within the same game. And it also helps them with memory and focus. It was really an amazing, wonderful game that I enjoyed when I was young. The second game, it says Hibbo. Hibbo is a riddle. And this is a game that helps children to learn about their kinship, about their family, extended family, about their generations back. We used to count our generation from our fathers way to the back, and then until it ends to Oromo. This is how kids learn how they're connected with each other, with their neighbor. And we used to identify people in the neighborhood who lives 2 houses down, how many people live in that house, how many kids they have, how many of those children are boys or girls. So it really connects because you learn about the people around you intimately, and you care about them. And again, this is another wonderful game that I enjoyed as kids, and I wish we could replicate this for our generations, which I can say a little later on. The next one is Bini Bino. This is another game that teach kids about animals in our surrounding, in our environment and beyond. And the last but not least is Muki Muko. Muki Muko is a game in which kids learn about plants and trees in our surrounding. These are really like a fun games. We did it as a game, but they are very educational. We have fun, we play at the same time, we learned about these different things. So just to give you a summary of on the importance and the role of storytelling. Storytelling is really in our culture, in most indigenous culture for that matter, is a powerful it's a powerful educational tool. Storytelling and games in the Oromo culture was what preserved our heritage, our culture, the little we have today, the little story, the little history, the little rituals we have, it passed down to us this way, through storytelling, through games, through older adults passing to their kids. Storytelling is one way one generation passed these beautiful traditions to the next generation. So it's really important and it's very crucial that we, my generation, have to be responsible to pass down to our children, the little we know, and try to learn and pass it down, the language and the tradition. We are responsible to pass it down. How does this apply to the diaspora? As we all know, our history, our culture, came back from the verge of being forgotten, and it's gradually surviving now back home. But in the diaspora, how can we sustain it? How can we preserve it? How can we pass it along to our kids? How can we, language is very critical, and these traditions and this knowledge is really very important, and I cannot say it enough, that we have to pass it down, because in the diaspora, we now have second generation children who are born in this country, in Europe, in Australia, and Canada, everywhere, outside of their homeland, outside of the cultural context, and they're already once removed, right? How can we help them? And now they are having their own children, they're having their own families. How can we help this new generation, help them as they grow family? How can we help them that they also retain these cultures and be able to pass it down? Otherwise, I can leave it to the audience what our future will look like in the diaspora. Are we going to exist as a people who has a culture, who has the language, or we're going to just melt into these melting pots, as they say? So I just want to leave you with a question to reflect on. What can we do to support generations coming after us? How can we ensure they continue to value and embrace their cultural heritage? What stories or games can you pass? It could be just one story that you can pass to your child, to a sibling, to your child's friend in the community. What is one story from your childhood that you remember you can pass on? How can we build a bridge between the old and the young to promote shared experience, mutual learning, and a sense of continuity with families and community? Thank you.